mastery, theology, and culture. From the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology, Seth Taylor's wisdom covers dynamic topics ranging from theology and mysticism to addiction and healing. Seth uses his own life experiences as a vehicle to help others. Whether it be motivational speaking, his publications, or personalized life coaching sessions, Seth provides life transforming experiences and delivers the powerful message that life was never a war to be fought, but rather a sacred journey to be walked. When Seth is not spending quality time with his wife and children, Kenyon Maverick, he is speaking to churches and groups around the country. Such is our fortune to have him today as a speaker from Seattle, Washington, and a massive Seattle Sounders fan. I welcome Seth Taylor. Thank you very much.
You guys up front, that's great, man. That's great. That intro was something, man. Nice. Thank you. How you guys doing? I know you guys have been sitting for a long time, so I definitely want to respect that, and I don't want anybody getting too sedentary. Right? That's kind of the goal. But I want to welcome you guys to your professional lives. I know there's a lot of welcome to Major League Soccer. I want to welcome you guys just the world of working people. How many of you guys this is your first real job? Nice. Anybody here done coffee shop? Anybody been a barista? Yeah? Right.
I thought you meant just in that room.
Oh yeah, and then you were in a coffee shop?
No, just service.
Service, gotcha. Fast food? Anybody done fast food?
No, Brian.
Anybody fast food? No? All right, so for a lot of you guys, this is your first job, which is pretty fascinating. It's a big job for your first one. Right? You guys are now, you're in the professional, quote unquote, real world, and someday you will. I hate it when we talk about players retiring. Because you're not going to retire, not for a long time. You will change jobs at some point. You will have a career shift. Okay, everyone does. Every human being does at some point. Most guys in their early 30s, whether they're pro athletes or not, find new careers. That's what a midlife crisis is all about, right? You find new avenues, new creativity, new things. Okay, so you guys at some point will change jobs, and what I want to talk about today is a little bit of kind of what it looks like to move from one season of life to another. Okay, because you guys I'm going to encourage you guys to think of your lives in seasons. We are in the morning time of your life. Okay, someday you will move to the afternoon, and someday you will move to the evening, and I hope that's a great time, right? But what we're going to talk about is a pretty simple concept. Right now, at some point, very quickly, if you haven't already, you guys will be asked a question. You'll be in a club or a pub or a church or a bar, something like that, and someone will walk up to you and ask this very American question: what do you do? Right? What do you do? Some girl will come to you, so what do you do? Right? And you guys now have a very sexy answer, which is great. You know what I mean? And you got to figure out how you're going to say it, right? Because you'll be like, I pray for the Sounders. In Seattle, you can say that, they'll know what you're talking about, right? In some cities, maybe not, I'm not sure. But you can say, well, I pray for the Sounders, and they just go, oh, And there's this kind of thing that happens, right? What do you do? So what I want you to do, first of all, just turn to the guy next to you and ask him, what do you do? And let's see how you guys answer. What do you do? Because you kind of did that. I don't know. What was your answer? I live life. Okay. Live life. All right. Ringo, what about you? What was your answer? I play soccer. They'd be like, in high school? You're going to have that question, right? And what you hope is they don't dig too far. What was your answer?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh,
tell him.
I'm a firefighter, or I'm on the show on Netflix, Chicago Fire.
There you go. Well, it's interesting.
We got stand for our service the other day. They thought we were dead-ass firefighters. That's where we're at.
And you're going to play with them a lot, right? And it's a very, like I said, it's a very, you can play with that answer a lot because you're not answering like I'm a janitor or trying to come up with something. You got a very sexy answer, so it's nice. Right? So enjoy that. It's great. You hope they don't dig any further than that, right? Because if some girl asks you like, what do you do? Well, I play for the Fire. Really? Are you any good? Yeah, well, yeah. Do you play? How much playing time do you get? You don't want that. Hey, what's your contract status? Are you like well-known in some way? No. Surely you're not a DP. Right? So, that's what you don't want. Right? Because you start to realize in American culture, this question, what do you do? There's something else they're actually asking. What's your value? Okay? What's your value? Who are you? Right? What value can you bring to me? This is what celebrity is. Okay? It means, and you know, in some cities there's more celebrity than others. And if you're a Timber and you say, I play for the Timbers, you are a celebrity in that city. Right? Same thing with the Seattle. You know, I mean, there's places where you can say it, and they immediately, this whole kind of thing we call celebrity enters the room, which is like another character that enters the room, and all of a sudden starts telling stories about you that aren't probably true. Right? I remember when I became a writer, you know, when I published a book, and at the time I was working part-time for $10 an hour as a barista at Starbucks, but I had a book out. So when I would, you know, somebody said, what do you do? You know, well, I'm a writer. It's very sexy. And nobody ever digs, well, you know, how many books have you sold? And they don't say that, they just go, I always want to write a book. That's what everyone does. And you go, oh, great. You know, and then you become a teacher. Yeah. You know, so you're telling a story about you. I'm telling a story about myself. Not only am I successful in their eyes, and now I can teach them, and I'm the wise one, all these kind of things. When truth is, you know, I might have sold two copies. They don't even know. I played small college ball, and I was at a big reunion thing we had, and a bunch of the guys were catching up, you know, and one of the guys comes up and says, hey, Zach, what are you doing, man? What have you been up to? And he's like, well, you know, I got a law practice, got 2 offices down in one kid doing defense law. I'm like, that's great, man. And he says, yeah, what about you? And I could hear my ego. Like the voice of that thing that wants you to survive at all costs. And it says, just say writer, man. Just say writer. Just say writer. And I went, and I was like, I don't want that thing running my life, so I'm like, I am a proud partner of the Starbucks Corporation. And it says, that's great, man. Just waiting for that next thing, huh? Yeah, something like that. Anyway, that was the thing, and I was in the middle of this experiment. I was doing this experiment, and not about what I do, but who am I? I was asking this deeper question, who am I? Okay, this idea of identity, you know, because this is something maybe you guys know, maybe you don't, but this is something athletes struggle with in a unique way. Okay, they struggle with it during their careers. They struggle with it the second the story starts to fail a little bit. Like you get drafted, you know. I got a kid I used to coach got drafted #1 in the draft a few years back, and now he's languishing somewhere in the lower leagues, and he's struggling. He's in that space where the story started to fail. At first, it was like, I'm the #1 super draft pick, and I'm this and I'm that. And that story was kind of holding him up. I am somebody, right? There was something in him that needed that story. And then the story started to fail because he wasn't performing. And then it kind of flipped on him, and all of a sudden there was this new voice kind of being added to the thing. You know, also his ego, instead of going, you're the man, it was going, you suck, man. Like it was saying that and kind of driving him down. Right? I got a call a few years ago from a player in America, Top, he plays for Vancouver, and Eric and I were friends, and I'd been telling him for years. I'd seen some of that struggle with him, the identity stuff. He came up, hard life, hard childhood. He was the savior of his family, you know, with his abilities, and that ego story in the man worked for him all through his youth, through his high school years, as it probably has for you guys, because he was the man among boys at every level. But then you get here, and you're a man among men, and everything starts to change, right? So he got there, and he was struggling. Now he's still just a hell of an athlete. He's got all this kind of working for him. But this new voice, he says, I'm starting to hear a voice. What do you mean a voice? He goes, when I'm on the field, when I'm playing. He says, yeah, I can hear it. It's saying, don't pass me the ball. Don't pass me the ball. I was like, well, man, we better deal with this because your career will not last long if that's the voice in your head, right? He starts going, yeah, it's weird. So we start kind of going after these kind of stories that he's telling himself. And we figured out after a while that there was this anxiety that he was dealing with every single day in practice, this sense that the gaze of his coaches looking at him in judgment and the gaze of the fans by the thousands looking at him was kind of, it felt the same as his parents from the sideline when he was a little kid. Right? So he was struggling in his identity. Who am I? Like, if I can't dominate, who am I? You know? Now, I want to get a little bit into how this works, and there's a lot of material here, so I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to try to get through it. But the way this kind of develops in a human being is that when you're born, okay, you come out of the womb, you have certain needs, and you feel very entitled to certain things, okay? Now, the way a human being functions as far as needs go, I'm going to just give you a sense to give you a platform of what identity and how it's built. Anybody here a psych major? The only psych major in the room. Do you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to quiz you, all right?
Oh,
All right, there was a psychologist named Abraham Maslow years ago. He came up with this hierarchy, right? These different levels of basically saying this is how human beings function. This is what they need. They are driven. Your entire life you are driven to achieve this higher need for your life. And if you do, you live a happy and wonderful life and you die happy, right? But it starts at the base with base needs, right? So everyone here is seeking to fulfill all these needs, but if you can't get the base one, you can't move to the next one. So what's the base one, remember? Yeah, physiological, right? Yeah, food, shelter. Okay, so physiological needs at the bottom, right? You need air, right? If you don't have air, you can't really worry about anything else, right? You know, you need air, you need food, water, shelter. I think sex is in the basic one, right? All right, second one. What's your name, by the way?
Nico.
Ego?
Nico.
I was about to say, whoa, no way. Nico?
Nico.
All right, Nico, what's the second one, bro?
Oh man, does it go like family, like security kind of thing?
Safety, security, there you go. Safety, security. Safety, security. So once you've got air, water, all that kind of stuff, you can start to shift your energy into, am I safe? Okay, so think caveman for a second. You know, a caveman wakes up every day, probably lives in this space all his life, right? He's walking out of his cave and he's thinking, where's the saber-tooth tiger? How do I get food today, right? And that's base, that's where they're living. And we can say this is kind of what the ego is in charge of. The part of your psyche that's in charge of your survival. Does that make sense? Right? That's ego. And somebody said, well, the guy's got a big ego. He's a survivor. Right? Those guys, the more the guy talks trash, right, it's a counterbalance to this internal sense of, like, I'm going to die. Right? Like, I'm the man, and the internal actual belief is, I suck, right? So there's this kind of counterbalancing. So the voice of the ego is a safety, security voice. Okay? Survival. Right? Nico, next one.
Is it like relationships?
You're not using your phone, right?
Huh?
You're not using your phone, right?
No.
Yeah, love and belonging. Well done. Love, belonging. Okay? Once you know you're safe, you can turn to somebody and go, man, I really like you. Let's build a family. You know, you can actually invest in things like relationships and love and that kind of thing. Okay? That's the safety thing, right? Next one.
Is it like self-esteem?
Yeah, nice job. Nice job. Esteem. You're doing well. Esteem, that's your next need. That's the next higher need. Esteem is, what am I capable of doing? What can I create? All right? And think about this in terms of your life. Right now you're creating on the field. What can I build as far as a career? What can I build? But there is this entire other world waiting for you. The majority of your life will not be spent playing soccer. Right? So this is something that you get to move in soccer. What can I do here? You know, what can I do there? And what can I do move beyond that? Right? Okay, top one, you go.
Like self-identity.
Yeah, self-identity or self-actualization. Yeah, that's the concept, right? Maslow called it self-actualization. Okay, I like Nico's term better. You know, identity. Okay, we can say this is who I am. Okay, who I am. Now that means you have a sense of who you are that is not connected to what you do. Okay, that makes sense? So if I say, what do you do? I'm a soccer player. Who are you? You don't go, oh, my name is so-and-so, I play for the Sounders, right? You know, that's not the thing, right? You know that there's a sense of who I like how you said I live life. Well, yeah, that's what you're doing. You're always going to be doing that. You're always going to be good at it. Sometimes you love ups and you love downs and you experience, right? This is an experience. You guys are men who are experiencing something. You get to have a very unique experience, okay? But identity in pro athletes takes on a unique kind of a struggle, if you will. There's a problem that kind of develops at times with you guys, because you guys have been moving into this vocation longer than most people. Like my buddy Sam is an electrician. He hasn't been training to be an electrician since he was 5, right? Most of you guys have been, right? When you guys were, in those ages we call them the developmental years, from about 0 to 10. In those years, you are actually, you're basically asking 2 questions, okay? And they're unconscious questions. 0 to 10, you know, I got kids, I don't know if, I mean, there's a few people in here that have them, but those kids, they're not sitting around thinking about deep stuff and that kind of thing. They're really asking 2 questions. What makes me safe? What makes me valuable? Those are 2 unconscious questions. The second you come out of the womb, you're asking that question, okay? So what makes me safe? What makes me valuable? Now, when you come out of the womb, right, and that's an unconscious question for a newborn baby, where do you think that they're getting that question answered? Mom. Yeah, it's pretty simple, right? Mom, right there, right at the breast. Okay, that's essentially what breastfeeding is. It's a bonding thing. Okay, home is where that question is answered. And it's designed to answer that question for you until you're ready to leave home. Okay? But between 0 and 10, those years, this is the only thing that matters. Okay? What makes me safe? What makes me valuable? Okay? Those are the questions. Now, most of us are still asking these questions at a lot of levels. Okay? Now, what happens with this is that we're supposed to get it here. What makes me safe, what makes me valuable? I am my mother's son. I am my father's son. Okay? We live in this home world. Okay, that's a part of our world. And then there's this other world, okay, that we live in, that we start to venture into as we get older. And we call it, let's call it performance world. Okay? In that world, you go, okay, so now that I know who I am my mother's son, I am my father's son, I know who I am, I know what makes me safe, I know what makes me valuable. We venture out into this world, what can I do? Okay? This is where we build the higher needs, self-esteem, these kind of ideas, love and belonging, self-esteem. We venture out into relationships outside the home. We venture out into what can I accomplish, what can I create, what can I do? All right? And we were meant to be here, live here, go here, have an experience, and then come back here and check back into what makes us safe, what makes us valuable. But for athletes, and especially in our culture, okay? I can't speak a lot to other cultures. I learned how to play soccer on a dirt field in Africa when I was a kid, okay? So it's different there. Because we didn't have our parents on the sidelines. We didn't have coaches. We didn't have people screaming at us from the sidelines. I had a garbage dump. I was the only white kid in the neighborhood. And it was our Sam, I was surrounded by garbage dump. So I didn't go out there with this world and this world together. Right? Most of you guys did. Some of you guys, when did you start playing soccer? What year? You're 5 years old. Anybody else 5 years old? Anybody earlier than that? Start playing before? So we got guys, wow. So we got guys, we're doing 3, 4 years old already, right? You're out there. And you know what a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 5-year-old, you know what they experience on a soccer field when mom and dad are watching? They're out there asking what 2 questions? What makes me safe? What makes me valuable? And then mom and dad start cheering, and they score that goal. They hear the cheers. That response from the one that makes me safe, makes me valuable. When I do this, I get that. And then you see how these 2 worlds start to combine? They start to come together pretty quick, right? I call it the car ride home syndrome. You know, pretty soon every time you get in the car after practice, how was practice? And you're like, oh, just like, oh. But there's this, how was practice? It's good. Yeah, it's good. Did you have fun? Yeah. If it was bad, it sucked. Why'd it suck? Right? And then this kind of relationship is always kind of moving around here. What you want is you want that car after practice to be just this safe zone, right? Where it's just disconnected from the rest of it because we want to live here and go here and see what we can do. But we end up with this unique kind of thing, this unique world. Okay, worlds collide, and you get this kind of thing. The 2 worlds come together, and we start to live in this space. And all of a sudden, when I play well, I am safe. When I play well, I'm valuable, right? That's how the child understands it at 4 or 5 years old. So Eric told me this fascinating question when we were working on this with him. He's like, yeah, my first game I scored 8 goals. He was like 6. I scored 8 goals, and my parents were just freaking out. And I mean, there's video of it, okay? And he's scoring these things, and right away he was somebody who was struggling, he was from a rough home anyway, and he starts going, okay, if I do this, I can get what I need. The safety, the value, the love, the unconditional love, right? We all wanted it, we're all hoping for it. If I do this, I can get it, right? So he comes in, he's trying to get it in that space, and that pretty soon you start to find out that you develop a parental relationship with the game itself. In a way, we ask the game to parent us, okay? And I know some of you guys are probably resonating with this, where all of a sudden the game's not as much fun, it won't work. And there's a sense of, I gotta go there and I gotta perform, and there's this kind of, there's a danger there, because can soccer love you? Can it? No. Not unconditionally. It's going to hate you at some point. every game, you're going to experience that. Anybody ever go through a confidence like crisis, like a slump? Anybody? Yeah. Where it's all of a sudden you lose your touch or something like that. Like I remember that in college. Like I had it for like 6 months. I lost my touch. I don't know where it went. Right? And then one day it came back, and I still don't know why. But there was this thing where it went away because the game wasn't safe. I was asking it to parent me, and it can't. It cannot give you unconditional love. Right? So we developed this kind of toxic relationship with the game, and pretty soon it's all we know. It is our identity. I am this. Without this, I don't know what or who I am. Right? And I've interacted with player after player after player when they come out of, not just when they come out of their careers, even right in the middle of their careers, they're going, oh, I don't know who I am. And there's not much thought because they live in that kind of survival space. They're stuck at the safety security space, right? And because they live in that, and that's not just athletes, that's a lot of people. That guy that's got 10 million, but he's got to get 15, that's safety security. You know what I mean? That's not a man who's free and self-actualized, because even look at his 10 million and go, that's enough, I got enough, I'm good. Right? Anybody watch Breaking Bad? Yeah, remember that scene in the storage unit where there's like a giant stack of cash, and Spike goes, how much is enough? And you can tell his ego's like, no, I have to get more, I have to get more, I have to get more, right? And now, that is a lot of our experience. And every day it's tough because you guys live, your job is one of every single day stepping into a space that simply isn't safe. You perform, you stay. You don't, right? And that's harder than your average job. You know, my buddy Sam, he goes to work, he doesn't have, like, if he has a bad day at work, his job is not threatened. You know what I mean? You guys live in a unique space. It's very soldier-like. Okay? You know, Pat talks a lot about that. He says, I feel like I was at war for 9 years. Okay? And that's a hard space to be, especially when you're asking this thing to love you, which most of us are, from an unconscious space. Right? It's coming from a very unconscious space. That makes sense? All right. So that kind of unique element, the whole point that we want to do, that I want to do with you guys today is get you asking kind of a deeper question. Right? Have we asked the game to at least at an unconscious level, to love us in this way? Right? You can probably think back to your relationship with your parents. I'm sure some of you guys have strained relationship with your parents because of what was it you experienced from the sideline. Some of you guys maybe not. Some of you maybe did, you just don't know it yet. Right? I've known friends who their relationship was a toxic one with their parents. I mean, their parents literally sacrificed the relationship with their child to make them an awesome player. Right? And that might be our relationship with the game. And what I want you guys asking as you guys go into this, right? My goal is that the deeper question, okay, not what do we do? You know what my real goal is that every time that you get asked that at a club or a bar, that you just remember this talk. When somebody goes, what do? You just go, you don't really know me, do you? Like you actually get into that, where you go, I live life. Yeah, what do you live life doing? Becoming. Right? Because that's what we're trying to find, right? We're trying to find self-actualization. A lot of you guys are going to find it here in your soccer careers. You'll find it later on, like most of us do. Right? You'll find it at some other point where you ask these deeper questions. But if we ask that question, who am I? Every time somebody says what you do, you ask yourself, at least inside yourself, you're going, who am I? Right? Do you see how that gives you a leg up on not only in your career here, but in the life after? Okay, Pat mentioned the stat yesterday. He was saying about 50%, the statistics say 50% of you guys within 2 years won't be in the league anymore. Right? And that's a tough stat. It's part of your job. It's what you guys are taking on here, right? But if we start asking the question now, who am I? Okay? Then you'll start to realize that what brought you to this place, what made you great here, will make you great at the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. But if we don't do that work, okay, and some of it is therapeutic, there is a therapeutic thing. If you find inside, I don't know who I am, and I'm afraid of that, then there's some work to be done, all right? We're going to do that therapeutic work. We're going to find that space. But if you start asking that question now, the killer thing is that when the day comes, and maybe this is over, whether that's 2 years from now, whether that's 15 years from now, you have this kind of question driving you to the next space. Okay, found out what I could do there, and I'm searching for who I am, so let's go to that next space. What else can we do? And if you don't know, okay, I'm going to use my friend Pat as an example. Pat came out. You know if I tell the story a little bit about yourself? I don't want to steal your thunder, but you know, he came out of his career and he did what a lot of guys do. I guess I'll do real estate, right? You know, you start selling real estate, and after a while it's like, well, it was always, what do I do now? What do I do now? What do I do now? And I started to realize that his soccer career was this kind of identity thing, and now we're just taking that same frustration, we're going to transfer it to another space. We're going to ask that thing to tell us who we are, right? And then he just, after a while, literally, it just only took about 6 months, and he just went, I can't do this way. I have to blow up what I understand about myself. I have to find out who I am. So he started this kind of a spiritual pilgrimage in a way, where I'm gonna start doing intensive, deep therapeutic work. I'm gonna start kind of working on myself. I'm gonna do some travel. I'm gonna do some moving around. I'm gonna actually kind of find out who I am, and I'm gonna trust that from that deeper space, that self-actualized space, if I can get there, whatever it is I do will just flow. You guys will make most of your money after soccer, okay? Especially if you ask this question. Right? You'll make most of it later. You'll take everything you've learned from this space and you'll create something even greater. Right? And if we can do that too, we can all stay connected to the league as a group of self-actualized, happy people that are instead of languishing in that identity crisis space for a long time, we actually become the men we always wanted to be. Then we can come back and actually teach that new generation of players coming up as well. Does that make sense? All right, so here's the thing. I'm going to give you guys 3 kind of steps, and I'm going to open up for questions on them. I'm going to give you 3 basic steps that kind of help you with this, right? First one is notice your ego. Like even when you start, even in conversations tonight, I want you to notice your ego, okay? The ego is the part of your psyche that is in charge of your survival, okay? That's it. That's its only job, right? The whole what do you do question is a really good one, because we all start telling stories about ourselves, right? Anybody here bought a really nice car yet? Come on, be honest. Anybody? What'd you buy?
2016 Nissan 370.
Nice, nice. All right, cars tell stories, right? When you got in it, did you have any experience of it? Yeah, I'm there. Yeah, because it tells a story about us, right? And that wears off eventually. You figure out, oh my God, it's another way to get us to practice, right? And we figure that out because it's telling us a story. And oftentimes in our culture, we use cars to kind of balance some of that stuff to tell us a story we want to believe about ourselves, right? It's like you walk around here and you're like, holy cow, I mean, you can count the Ferraris. I had a Rolls Royce behind me today. It's a freaking $1 million car, like driving around. And they're out there and they're just, and you realize there's a story being told. We're all telling this kind of story, right? And if you notice where your ego is telling you the stories, and it'll flip on you, trust me, your ego will betray you because all it wants to do is help you survive. Survive what you're experiencing here and survive what you're carrying here. Because we all carry trauma. Right? You ever get stressed out, you feel it in your body, you get knots in your stomach, you get tight in your chest. A lot of you guys might experience it walking out to practice every day. You'll feel this tension start to, right? If you notice in your body, that's what your ego is trying to help you survive. That's stuff you've been carrying a lot of time, a lot of your life. Therapeutic is meant to help you get that out of your body so that you're clear, okay? Right? We want to notice how the ego helps us survive that with those kind of stories. What kind of stories did it come up with? Like me with money. You know what I did when I was working part-time at Starbucks? I bought a $50,000 SUV, right? I needed the story. I remember going, I remember I got in it and right away. I pulled up to Starbucks for work and I heard my ego because I've been practicing listening to it. It was a whole experiment I was trying to do to change my life. And I heard this story. It said, now they'll know how successful you are. I was working part-time for $10 an hour. Now they'll know how successful you are. And I literally said it out loud, how insecure am I? Holy cow. Right? I needed something in me. It was like, I need these stories. Right? And so I kept doing the therapeutic work. I'm going to change this. I don't want to have to depend on those stories. I just want to be. I just want to be able to say, I live life. That's what I do. I'm at peace. I have experiences. Okay? I get to do all kinds of cool stuff now. Yeah, I get to write and speak, and I have a business, and we contribute to cultural transformation. It's wonderful. The great thing is now somebody asks me, well, what do you do? I can still tell them, yeah, I'm a writer, I'm an author, but I don't have that connection to it. I don't need the story anymore to tell me who I am. Does that make sense? So notice your ego. Okay? You had a great story last night when you were talking about that. Well, your coaches were talking about, well, maybe we need to put you in USL or do something like this, and you're going, I know I'm as good as that. I'm as good as that guy. I'm as good as that guy. Pat was like, and you asked him for advice. It was great. He asked Pat for advice, and Pat's like, try to accept the other story where your coach is telling you, because there's an unconscious thing in you that wants to keep saying, I'm good, I deserve this, I deserve this. I remember Eric was really struggling with that. He's like, I deserve this, I deserve this, I deserve this. You go, well, that's a good story you're telling yourself, man. Your coaches are telling you a different story. And their story is based on one thing, numbers, right? That's what it is. Who's getting paid what? Sometimes they got to pay a guy, they got to play him because they're paying him, right? There's all kinds of numbers telling those stories, but we all have a story, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best. Open up, watch where your ego is trying to help you compensate for actual fear that sits underneath it. Does that make sense? Okay, don't be afraid to confront that, because if you can, then you can live where you are and set goals for your future and move from there, okay, without having to survive. Okay? That makes sense? Okay, number 2, is see your life in seasons. Okay? It's a really important thing that you guys start right now. Start understanding that this will end soon. Even if you have a long career at a relatively young age, where most people, like myself, are just starting to make their money, you guys are going to have a radical shift in your lives, right? And some guys are going to, I remember I was going to talk to Nate Jacob the other day, you know, and he was scoring goals with the Sounders, and now he works on a farm, he works on a family farm back in Eugene, he's happy, you know, he's doing good, he's like, but it's like that, there's this radical shift in your life, and that will happen to you too. And you can set goals for that now, okay? You can set goals for that now. What do I want to do? You know, what other things do I love? You can start to nurture that, cultivate, even as you're cultivating and nurturing, right? So understand that there's seasons. I like to think of it in terms of, like I said before, you got morning, that's you guys right now. Start thinking about the afternoon. You know, what's the afternoon look like? You know, and then someday you'll have an evening. Don't worry about that for now. It'll be fun, right? Evening will come when it's time, right? And the hope is that every one of you guys is the sage, the village elder by the time you get here. Instead of the cranky old people, they're just retiring down here because they just can't handle, like their parents or their kids are trying to get them as far away as they can. We want the sage. That's where we want like a generation of wise people that are coming back and giving their wisdom to the world. Okay? And the third thing is this. Be intentional. Be very, very intentional. Now, what that looks like is this. We don't do things by accident. You know? We don't go to practice every day to survive. We go to practice to be connected to our body, connected to our soul, work on things. Seek mentors. If finances interest you, if art interests you, if psychology interests you, if anything, you like helping people, see people that you meet. You'll meet a lot, okay? You'll meet a lot of people. You guys are celebrities now. You're gonna meet all kinds of people. When you see somebody that sparks your interest, man, that guy seems really happy. He seems to enjoy what he does. Find mentors. Be intentional. Walk up to them and go, hey, would you be willing to connect to me? Would you talk to me once in a while? Can I ask you questions? Can we just get to have coffee once in a while? I guarantee you they will do it, right? And when I started to realize this truth, I got crazy because I was like, I want to be a writer. I want to be a best-selling author. And I found the 3 guys that had influenced my life, the writers, who were all just these mega celebs. And I went to a book signing and I started just getting aggressive. I remember jumping in the guy's path at one point, just blocking. Like, he was walking to the table and I'm like, hey. He's like, what? Well, and I shook out my hand and I knew he was a soccer fan, so I was like, hey, I heard you're a soccer fan. I didn't even wait to hear. I heard you're a soccer fan. He goes, I am. I mean, you're a soccer fan. I go, I'd like to take you to the game. And he goes, you would? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I heard it's incredible. We're going to say, I heard it's incredible. Yeah. And then now he's my mentor, right? And I literally get on a plane. I fly to LA. I drive to a coffee shop. He sits with me for 90 minutes. I get back on a plane and go back to Seattle, and it's worth every single second and penny that I spend to spend time with him. And I just ask him questions. I just take what he says and soak it in. Okay, so seek mentorship, seek therapy. Whatever anxiety, fear, depression, anything you experience, okay, in this league, seek therapy. Guys like me spend our lives trying to figure out how to get rid of the stigma that therapy means you're weak. That's bullshit at every level, okay? Therapy makes you healthy. Healthy makes you happy. Happy makes you creative. Creative makes you wealthy, okay? If we can do that, we just get healthy, you're gonna attract a better woman, you're gonna have better relationships, you're gonna be a better father, okay? If that's something you desire, you're gonna be a better businessman someday, you're gonna be a better writer, speaker, author, doctor, lawyer, whatever it is you wanna do, okay? So see therapy. Use soccer as a thing. If you walk in practice every day, you experience anxiety. Where do you feel it? You get knots in your stomach. If you do, how do we deal with it? Find out how to deal with it, okay? Connect with me, connect with Pat. We know how to help you. We've been doing this work for a while, right? 7, 8 years ago, I was depressed, couldn't get off the couch, okay? Couldn't function. Anxiety, depression, addiction, you name it, right? Now I'm happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise, and I have an awesome life, and I have amazing kids, and it's amazing. But I need to work my ass off therapeutically to get there. Does that make sense? All right. Be intentional. See therapy, do that. Go into your unknown, confront your fears, and be honest with yourself. And be honest with your teammates. Okay? You know what I mean? Dispense with the BS. We're sitting around telling each other stories about how awesome we are. Maybe every once in a while tell them a story about how we actually feel. Right? You're going to be stuck in a lot of hotels with a lot of friends for a long time. Okay? That's how it works. This league, you travel in any league in the world. Right? Spend time getting honest once in a while. with yourself and with your teammates. Yeah. And if you do that, and with your mentors, and you do that, then you start to open up, and then all of a sudden your life becomes this trajectory that moves that way. Okay? As opposed to seeing some retirement coming. You're not going to retire. You're going to move into a new chapter. Right? That's how it works. You move from chapter to chapter. This chapter is incredible. It's a very unique experience that you get to have. And guys like me always fight I call it the Uncle Rico syndrome. I've never seen Napoleon Dynamite. But you're like, oh man, if I knew then what I know now, maybe I'd make it, right? And I watched somebody score a goal. You know, when Pat won Goal of the Year in 2012, I don't know if you've ever seen that goal he scored. And we watched it the other night, we were just hanging out, I was like, well, let's watch it again. We watched it, and we go, what did I feel like? He's like, I don't really remember. You know? But it is like, what an experience you guys get to have. It's so unique, but it's also harder than the average, okay? The average kid going into his first job is going to Starbucks or something like that, doing landscaping. You guys have a harder job, it's a deeper responsibility. Most people won't understand, right? They think they do, and they lift you guys up into this space, and they don't recognize how intense it is, how unique it is, how special it is. It's got its ups, it's got its downs. But be honest about what your experience of it is. Does that make sense, guys? And the whole idea is, this is how you make a happy life, right? It's not just about a great career. Yeah, we want that for you. Everybody wants that for you. But what if we can find peace, joy, happiness in our whole life? Creativity. What makes you great here will make you great at the next thing. That make sense? All right. I got 6 minutes. Does anybody have any questions? Any thoughts, questions? I'd love to hear them if you have them. And if not, you can always hit us later on, but I'm sure there's something going on inside people's heads.
What would you say is the kind of book that's had the biggest impact on your life?
The biggest impact on my life?
Yeah, like
Suffering.
Text that you've read.
Oh, you said book?
Yeah.
I said thing, suffering, no question. Biggest book has had an impact on me. And it's interesting you said, his books tend to come in phases at the right time. You know, there's books that hit you at certain times in your life. You know, for me, my father died when I was a kid. So we lived in Africa when I was a little boy. My parents were missionaries over there, and my dad was a pilot and he was killed in Sudan. And so for me, a lot of my struggles that held me back in my life was the inability to deal with some of the grief of that. And I suppressed it. I suppressed it a lot. I suppressed it on the field. So for me, books that had something to do with bringing that grief out were really, really impactful on me. There was a writer named Donald Miller, and he's written his books. He had several books. His books are very much about living life. He's a hell of a writer, but he's becoming vulnerable. He had a book about fatherhood, about growing up without a dad. And then he had a book called A Million Miles in 1,000 Years, and it was about how do you make decisions in your life. And he basically said, what if we made every decision we made was based on trying to make your life a better movie? Which I thought was such a fascinating perspective. You guys think about it. Movies have action. Books, you can just talk. Okay, I get it. I wrote a book. You can read my book and it might help you or something like that. But you might not know much about me. With movies, there's action. Something has to happen. He goes, we'd say yes a lot more if we saw our life as a movie. You know, when somebody comes in and they criticize you, instead of going to war with fighting, we just kind of learn to go with the flow. So he started doing this life experiment. I'm just going to say yes to everything. You know, there's movies made about this. You know, and I just went, yeah, that's an amazing perspective. So I started doing it. And that's one of the things that just completely transformed my life. I did this life experiment because I was raised in really intense poverty. And I was like, I need to change this part of me because for some reason I can't seem to change that. And so I started saying yes to anybody that offered me a job that I never looked for. So if somebody walked up and said, hey, we need help with this, will you do it? I go, yeah, no matter what. And I ended up with some crazy jobs, man. I mean, some just insane jobs. But I learned a lot, and it just radically changed me. So I would say, you know, check out Donald Miller's writings. He's a good writer. He's fun to read too. He's not just like he's not a motivational guy. He's a beatnik poet, bro. He's amazing. So, any other questions? I know you guys got a lot going in your hearts and your minds, probably some of you guys more than others, but you guys want to talk about that kind of stuff? Myself, James, Pat, Dan, my buddy Dan Redwine in the back, everybody's been doing a lot of this work for a long time. You know, working on this stuff so we can bring it to you guys. If you have any more questions, just let us know later on. We'll be around. Thank you guys for having me. It's an incredible privilege.